This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. So the band couldn't find cover for me tonight, so I'm going to get a chance to gig the Nano Cortex for the first time. So I've decided to kind of put it on my board and not change things up too much. Trying to keep some elements of consistency. IEC cable goes in. We've got enough juice to run this. This is coming on. So this is running off of 500 milliamp but 12 volts. Then this should be running off the higher powered. I've got a Harley Benton thingy under here. Because this doesn't have an effects loop, what I think I'm going to do, I'll show you the signal chain roughly. Normally, I kind of go in here, guitar, Angry Driver, Carbon X, bus. That goes into the HX Stomp, which actually is running a delay and reverb. And then that would normally split off. So I've got a dodgy knob. Don't tell the wife. And that splits off to front of house. And here is where I'd split off to an amplifier. Now tonight I don't want to run an amp. So it doesn't have an effects loop, so I can't really effectively use delay up front of this. So this really wants to be sort of midway in your chain, and probably you want to be using the delay on the unit itself in some ways, or put this between drives and delays. It's kind of the ideal, I think, but I'll probably just be using it as like a pedal platform. So this is a capture of my Pro Reverb from 1964. And what I'll do, I think, is just bypass all this stuff on this line. Then that comes out here, into here, and that to the front of house. Now the other slight thing going on is that I don't have another send out of here. So if I wanted to send to like an FRFR or to an amp, then I really need something else on my board to dictate what's happening with that. So it is somewhat limited, but I think that's kind of part of the design in a lot of ways. Not everything necessarily needs an effects loop. I do feel like this, what with the capture being in the middle of transpose and a gate, it maybe would benefit from having a loop, particularly if you're going up front of it with any delay or reverb. Then if you switch between a higher gain preset and a clean preset, it's going to be a bit of a disaster. Let's just hear what this sounds like. I need to just double check before. But I could engage that for a bit of the old delay and reverb if I wanted to. I think I want that to be exactly kind of midway. So save. So if I need something more ambient, then that's there as an option. Okay, then jumping across here, I'll just show you the problem if you are going up front. So I've got my delay. So that's all good if I'm staying clean. But what if kind of changes the mix a bit too drastically? That is too wet. So that would really need to be post the drive section really to make better use of that. Also there's like way more reverb now. See the difference? So the actual mix of the reverb hasn't changed, it's just the compression on the actual capture itself. So various gain stages. And loads of headroom on this. This will be my lead boost, so I just need to make sure on the gig. Stuff, I've got that. So it kind of can integrate into this ampless rig idea quite nicely. Doesn't necessarily integrate into a hybrid rig with an amp quite as well as something like the HX Stomp. I guess is what I'm kind of figuring out as we go here. Because of the semi-limited kind of outputs, well, not even semi-limited, it's just 2 outputs. Like a little bit of a sticky situation in it, where if you want to be using the onboard delays and reverbs in the Nano Cortex, then you're pretty good and you use that as the last in your chain. The FR12 does have a input and output, so you could run one side through the FR12 and then straight back out to front of house, so you could sort that in that way. I really probably should be sticking this in the loop maybe of the HX Stomp, and then running delays after it, but that does then give me an extra kind of ADA conversion, which is going to increase latency slightly, so whether that's a benefit or not. Then if I was to take the HX Stomp out altogether and just be using the Nano Cortex with some other delay pedal, then the delay pedal being last in the chain, or whatever it was that I was putting last in the chain, is that going to have sufficient outputs to go to front of house, left and right? Probably. Is it ideal to go in front of house with, or would you put a DI box on your board, stereo DI box? Possibly. Lots of things to think about. Yeah, I think the way it probably integrates best is into like an already existing modelling solution. You maybe stick this in the loop, or you use it just by itself. The other options seem a little bit kind of more complicated, or you just use it drives up front and use this for your core delays and reverbs. I think the delay and reverb on there do actually sound pretty good, so although, you know, somewhat limited, they can absolutely get you through a lot of scenarios. Maybe you put another delay up front for sort of specialist stuff. I don't know. So yeah, this signal chain here, this kind of optional at that point, and then maybe a delay before the Nano Cortex. Could that work? I don't know, let me know your thoughts. There are some real benefits to the Nano Cortex, but I think in the experimentation of trying to figure out how I would incorporate this into a live rig, I've kind of happened across some kind of things where there's a question mark for me about how I would run it. The idea of having it last in your signal chain is maybe not super beneficial because it's kind of not an ideal hub in some ways, because it's just got the output 1 and output 2, whereas something like an HX Stomp or another modeler will have several outputs, so you might be able to do things slightly differently. But if you're just using the Nano Cortex by itself, then you'll probably be fine, right? So if you're using like an ampless rig, which would kind of make sense for this, what I'd be trying to do next time is maybe just simplify things down even further, where it was just some drives up front of this, or maybe even just go all in the box and stick one delay pedal up front, something like that. But it worked seamlessly. I think it's actually quite reassuring to look down at as well. It's nice to not have a screen kind of distracting in some ways. The pedal kind of designations are pretty clear. I did have some things where like a preset shifts as you're playing for some reason. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it's this parameter here on the knobs turning. That was something that happened. But other than that, no real other issues. Don't feel like it was the most inspiring tone I've ever played with, but for me, I think certainly Soundcheck, I really enjoyed that. And I really like the delay and the reverb in here as well, which I was not necessarily expecting. So another reason to kind of commit and try and go as much all in the Nano Cortex box as possible. Is it going to work for every guitarist out there? I think absolutely not. If you've already got a Quad Cortex, I think this could be maybe a backup, but I can see that probably there's going to be a bunch of people like, well, without XLRs, without all the other stuff that the Quad Cortex can do, is this really going to be for me? I think for bass players, it might be an absolutely ideal solution where the Quad Cortex might have been overkill for a bunch of folks. It's only going to be as good as the capture that you're running, even maybe more important than that, as good as whatever you're monitoring it through. So typically I tend to monitor through a Fender FR12 at the moment, and that seems to me to work really nicely with some rigs. I don't think this sounds better than any other solution, but it is significantly different enough that maybe it might be useful for some folks, possibly. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Sorry I was not at 100% for this gig at all. On a diet of ginger biscuits and ginger ale and stuff to try and stop the old vomit. But yeah, I think it's worth having around. I've got one more video to make with this before I let my buddy Jake borrow it, because he's needing essentially an ampless kind of rig. He's getting, you know, pilloried by sound guys on a weekly basis, and he's thinking, I just want to try something ampless for a bit. So he had his eye on this. For someone who doesn't want to go all in the modeling kind of world, wants something that can just capture their amps, that is the benefit of it, right? And this is the only device this size that you can do capturing with without a computer. Shout out Alec Bourne from the MIDI Mad Scientist Club. So that's what I want to try and do a video on next when I'm back up to speed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Have you tried one yet, or are you still convinced that I did actually catch a bit of a neural thing where they one of their splash teaser ads about it being a monumental leap forward and stuff, which was kind of like, is it? Question mark. But yeah, in general, I think a very solid little product that is easy to integrate on your board. It does have that downside of not having an effects loop, so it is a little bit more complicated thinking about how you'd actually use it, and having clean and dirty captures on the same kind of thing probably benefits you to either just go all in or think even more hard about something. Let me know your thoughts. Cheers.